citizen detectives. Welcome back to Pop Culture with Pat. Today we're going to be talking about Yellowjackets Season 3, Episode 1, titled It Girl. This is going to be my spoiler review, breakdown, recap. Going to be talking about thoughts and theories I have. So make sure you guys have seen the episode, because again, this is going to have spoilers. If you guys are new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button as well as the bell button next to it. That way you get notifications for all my new videos. If you can, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps out. I've been covering episodes since Season 1. I have multiple interviews with different cast members, so make sure to check those out. By the time this video comes out, I'm going to have my first interview of Season 3 with Vanessa Prasad, who plays Jen in this season. So you make sure you guys give that a watch, and hopefully have more coming your way for the season. But without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and talk about the episode, because we have a lot to talk about. So the episode opens up with Mari being chased, and we had that photo that was leaked, well not leaked, released online of Shauna biting Mari, and I thought for a second, oh shit, is Mari going to die here whenever this scene takes place? But as we can see, no, it just turns out that they're just playing a game. Although you can tell that it's not so much a game for Shauna, where she actually bites Mari's hand pretty damn hard. Now, between this scene and what happens at the end of the episode, do you think that this is more foreshadowing of what Mari's fate is going to be, that a lot of people have predicted she is going to be Pit Girl? I know that's kind of the popular theory, so maybe it's a bit too obvious, but I don't know, with this episode opening up this way and the end, kind of gives me more, I feel like backs up that theory a little bit, but I definitely want to hear what your guys' thoughts are, if you think that's going to be the case or not. Then we have the intro for the season, and as they always do, there are some new scenes that are cut throughout the intro. Now, the way that I was able to watch this, I wasn't able to stop and go through every single little scene that is in there. So if you guys, when you guys get a chance to watch the episode, if you do see some interesting clips that are cut in there, definitely feel free to share your thoughts down below in the comments, what you guys might have for theories, because I'm definitely curious, because I wasn't able to do it the way that I was watching it here. Now, after the intro, we see that the Yellowjackets have built a new little community consisting of different huts to replace the cabin that was burnt down at the end of Season 2. We also get to see some new team characters that are being introduced, which I thought was kind of interesting. And we also get a couple of grays marking the lives of the characters that we have lost so far in the show. Then see the Yellowjackets, they're having their first summer solstice, and Van gives a recap of the events of what happened in Seasons 1 and 2. And I really enjoyed this. Even though we did have that recap at the beginning of the episode, I thought this was a nice little touch, just because where it has been so long going from the events of Season 2 to Season 3. And so I thought I appreciated that as a fan. And then we also see, so this was before, but we have Nat, she's talking to Shauna, trying to convince her to come to the event, but Shauna wants nothing to do with it, and you can tell that she really doesn't have respect for Nat as a leader, which we kind of saw some of that at the end of Season 2 as well. After Van's recap, she then breaks down how different members on the team have taken on new roles. So for example, Jen, she's kind of become the hunter-gatherer for the group, bringing back different food. And if you guys haven't checked out my interview with Vanessa, she talks about that, how her role as Jen expands this season, which is really cool. So make sure you guys check that out. We also hear about how Ty helped build all the different huts that we have here. And so it was just really interesting to hear them kind of talk about them taking on those different roles, which it makes a lot of sense where they've been out here for so long now. But while all this is going on, you have Shauna, she's in her hut, she's journaling and just talking about how she thinks this is all bullshit. They're trying to kind of make this fun little fairy tale, but meanwhile, they don't want to talk about all the crazy shit that they have had to do to get to this point, all the people that have died, and so just that contrast between the two I thought was really interesting. And go to modern day, where we see Callie, she's running late for school. Shauna ends up coming into the room and tries to have another awkward attempt at trying to bond with her daughter, and it just kind of fails epically. At one point, she asks her daughter if she has been smoking, and Callie responds saying, "No one calls it that anymore. Did you call it chronic, Mom?" And the way that she responds saying, "I did, and I deeply regret it." I thought that was really funny. But again, just another one of those awkward mother and daughter attempts at bonding with each other, and it doesn't work out. Then we see Misty and Walter, with Walter asking Misty what time she wants to go to Natalie's memorial service, and Misty just doesn't seem like really she has a lot of interest in doing so. It isn't until the point Walter goes to leave and he conveniently places a key on the dresser, which he says is the key to Nat's storage unit, and should probably go there to make sure there's nothing incriminating in there, and that that eventually catches Misty's attention. Then we have Nat's service, and her mother ends up giving some very short and awkward last words for her, which, just looking at the reaction of the Yellowjacket members that are there, I thought their reaction was hilarious. And then you see Shauna, Ty, and Van, they end up going to get some drinks. And you find out it sounds like no one told Misty about what, Nat's services, what time they were going to be. Once again, Misty being left out of the loop. And Shauna makes a joke about, oh, she's probably bugged the table, so she knows what's going on. But when that happens, they go to a point of view of, it looks like someone possibly watching the table, or maybe the table is actually bugged. Now, I'm curious for you guys, do you think that the table was actually bugged, or do you think it was more likely that someone was probably in the room listening, watching them? I'm kind of leaning more towards the second half. I think that someone probably was there, especially where we got that point of view, and tying into the end of the episode where they find that package. I think those two things are connected together, but I definitely want to hear what your guys' thoughts are overall, so let me know down below in the comments for sure. And then from there, after that, we see Misty. She ends up going to Natalie's storage unit, and as she's going through there, going through her different stuff, we see her find the black jacket that Natalie wore, and we end up seeing later on her wearing that in the episode as well. Now we go back to the 90s timeline, and we see Shauna and Melissa. They're preparing some food for the feast later tonight for the team that ended up winning earlier in the day. Mari's over on the other side, and she makes a smart-ass comment that pisses Shauna off naturally. And Shauna looks at Melissa and just says that we should have eaten her first. At first, Melissa kind of gives her a reaction like that's kind of a little bit awkward, but then she makes a comment saying how Mari is just so dumb, and it kind of surprises Shauna. It takes her off, takes her by surprise, and Shauna just says, wait, you actually have a personality? So I thought that interaction was really fun. I thought it was funny. But the interesting thing is that it seems like we maybe are going to start seeing more of these girls' personalities coming out. I know Vanessa mentioned that in our interview that we're going to see her have an expanding role. Maybe that's going to be the case for Melissa as well. And I hope that we get to hear a little bit more from the couple other girls that are introduced in this season. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. Then you have Akila. She ends up coming over and she has this crown sort of thing that she made for Shauna to wear. And Shauna says, get that away from me. I don't want anything to do with this. Knocks it on the ground, and then Melissa comes over, stomps on it. And you can tell that definitely pisses off Akila. And just, you can see there's division amongst the group, like even more division than we've already had. But I'm kind of starting to think with little moments like this, Shauna, is she going to maybe have her group? So we have Shauna, Melissa. Who else do you think can maybe join that faction? And then I'm sure we're going to have either one or two other groups maybe split off at some point in the season. Who do you guys kind of think who's going to be on what teams at one point when they all do split off? We then see Nat, Van, Ty, and Jen meeting, and Ty asks Jen if when she's been out on her searches for food, if she's come across Coach Ben. And that's when Nat quickly jumps in and says, I've scoured the area. He's had to have frozen or just died out there in the wilderness. Now, do you think that she actually believes that? Because if you go back to season 2, there was that conversation between Ben and Nat where Ben says something along the lines that you're not like the other girls. And so do you think that Nat is actually convinced that Ben probably died out there in the wilderness? Or is she covering for him? And if that is the case, do you feel, which I'm kind of leaning that it might be the case, and that if that comes out that she is covering for Ben while he's out there, the rest of the group finds out, that's obviously going to cause some division. So I definitely want to hear what your guys' thoughts are on that whole kind of situation. We then also see shortly right after that conversation happens that Ty goes over to Nat and she says, hey, you got to get a handle on the situation between Mari and Shauna. We don't want to have another Jackie situation happen. We then get to, in fact, see that Coach Ben is alive. He's out there setting traps, trying to survive by himself, but he ends up stumbling across this little area in the ground where he sees there's some boars there. He's able to pull them up and finds out there's this little hideout, this little hole, and there is this big, pretty good sized container of survival supplies there left by somebody. And so there's food, different things like that. He ends up getting some of the food and he gets that out and covers it back up. Basically lays it as a trap for when deer come by later so he can try and capture them. As we see at the end of the episode, that's not who he ends up catching. Then we go back to modern day where we're at Callie's high school and we see these couple of girls. They're talking in front of the Yellowjackets memorial and they're just making fun of Callie's mom as well as her other friends. And you can tell that Callie isn't a fan of that, obviously. We then end up seeing Callie get something delivered to the school in a bag, and shortly after the principal calls Shauna to tell her what happened. Afterwards, Jeff and Shauna, they're talking about how Callie dumped guts on these girls. And is everything okay with their daughter after everything that's happened? Because she's kind of been through a lot within the past year, and definitely don't blame her. We also end up seeing Ty and Van. They're in a room, and Ty's on the phone talking to Simone about their son. And it was kind of just nice to have Simone and their son brought back up because I feel like it's been a long time since they had been mentioned. I know they're not necessarily primary characters, but yeah, I kind of almost forgot about them for a second there. After that happens, then Ty ends up talking to Van and basically says, hey, do you want to go get some dinner with me at a fancy restaurant? And so they end up going there. Then we go back to the 90s timeline. We have Travis and Lottie. They go out into the woods and Travis starts to trip as they're talking about Javi, his dad, and Lottie's past. And then Travis says he hears something and says it's the trees and that they're screaming and that Lottie will end up hearing them. Then we go back to the present day once again where we go to the restaurant where Ty and Van are at. And I really ended up liking this scene overall because so they're at the restaurant, they decide that they don't want to eat there, they want to get out. And so they try to get out without paying. And as they're running away, the song I Think We're Alone Now starts playing, and you kind of get this for a second, you get this cute moment of those two just reminiscing on simpler times when they were kids, when they were teenagers, just running away. You see the waiter comes out and he starts chasing them, but that's when things kind of get dark because as they're running away, they almost get hit by a car, the waiter almost gets hit by a car, and then because of that, it looks like he starts having a heart attack, and I presume he's probably going to die because the guy that's helping him, he falls on the ground, and so maybe he does survive, but I'm assuming he probably dies from that. And afterwards, then we see Ty and Van, they're in the alleyway, they start kissing, and Ty ends up seeing the man with no eyes again. Then we go back to the 90s timeline once again, and we see they're preparing for the feast that they're making for the winning team. When we see Shauna, she ends up spitting in Mari's food, and that causes another fight to break out between Mari and Shauna. And Nat has to step in at this point and say, hey, you're both on house arrest now. But Mari isn't having any of that, and she ends up storming off and saying, fuck you guys, basically. Then we jump back to the present day where we see Misty. She goes to the bar with Nat's jacket on. She ends up having, it's like 7 shots of whiskey or something like that. And she ends up having a vision of young Nat in the mirror and basically tells her, hey, you don't have to put up with shit from any of these douchebags. Now, I'm curious what you guys think here. Do you think that is going to be, was that just because she was drunk, just having that vision the one time? Or do you think that is going to be kind of a recurring thing that we see from Misty in this season where Nat was kind of the closest person to her, the only person that actually kind of treated her as a normal person. Everyone else kind of brushes her off, and so there's definitely a deep connection between those two characters. And specifically, I think it's going to be young Nat because, as far as I know, I don't believe Juliet filmed any scenes for season 3. So, but yeah, do you think that is something that is going to be brought up multiple times throughout the season or not? And then Misty, she's drunk and she goes over to the two guys and she says something along the lines of, I've lit dicks on fire before, and she throws the alcohol and attempts to try and do it again, and it's just like, God damn, Misty, I know that you're crazy, but holy shit, girl, calm down for a second. And we see Shauna talking to Callie about what happened, and she asks her if she's okay, but Callie says she just wanted to basically teach the girls a lesson, and so they have this mother-daughter bonding moment, and I just thought it was kind of hilarious because it's, after everything, this is how you guys end up finally bonding. It is a cute moment, even though it is a little bit dark. I love when Callie shows her mom that she captured everything on video, and they get a good laugh out of that. So I did like that scene there. And then we go back to Misty. She's walking home from the bar when Walter ends up pulling up next to her and says, hey, I'm gonna, get in. I'm gonna take you home. And Misty tells Walter, she says, no, I'll call my teammates. One of them will come pick me up. And Walter has to explain to her, hey, they had, your phone was at the bar. They went through all your contacts. No one answered until they got to W. And so you get this moment where Misty breaks down. She just, how she misses Natalie so much. And even though Misty can do some pretty fucked up shit, you do get this moment of humanity with her here, and I thought that was really, really touching, just to kind of see that, you know, she's been through a lot of shit. I mean, they've all been through a lot of shit, but I don't know, I just really appreciated that scene there. After that, we then end up seeing Callie. She is up, I believe she's in the kitchen or one of the other rooms, and all of a sudden hears something at the door, goes to the door, finds there's a package addressed to her mother, has the symbol on it, and when she opens it up, gets a tape, I believe, that looks like out of there before her father ends up coming into the room and scaring her. What do you guys think on the tape, and who do you think left it? Obviously, we've had the whole blackmail situation before, but who do you think is maybe after the Yellowjackets in this season? We finally, to wrap up the episode, we go back to the 90s timeline, and the group there doing a ceremony to honor the members that they have lost so far. And they talk about Jackie, there's Javi, and the baby, but there is no mention of Crystal, which I thought was really interesting. I know some people have had the theory that maybe Crystal doesn't actually exist, but I don't think that's the case, because if I remember correctly, in season 2, there were other people that interacted with Crystal, and so I don't think that's the case. But why do you guys think that maybe Crystal wasn't mentioned there or doesn't have a spot of burial? I know they weren't able to find the body, so maybe that's why, but I just thought that was kind of interesting why she wasn't mentioned at all there. And then as the group is doing this, they hear this one singular scream, which we find out who that is in a second, but then you start hearing all this other screaming coming around the wilderness, and it's the same screaming that Travis heard earlier in the woods, and so he looks at Lottie. Then we see that Coach Ben has caught something. He thinks it's a deer, but we find out it's actually Mari down in the pit. Now, I don't think Coach Ben is going to kill her there, because I thought I saw a photo or something that I didn't see from this episode, so I'm assuming she at least makes it a little bit further into the season. But I am curious, as far as that whole situation there with her down in the pit, again, is this foreshadowing her fate, what is to come later on, either this season or next season, of her being Pit Girl? And do you think that trap is basically, I mean, that's what I'm kind of assuming, that it is a precursor of the trap that they use to trap whoever Pit Girl ends up being. And so, but yeah, that is the end of the episode, guys. So a lot going on. It's really nice to be back. You know, it's been a long wait just between the writers and the actors strike, but I'm so glad to have Yellowjackets back in our lives. And if you guys are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button as well as the bell button next to it, so that way you get notifications for all my new videos. I'm going to be covering all the episodes this season, so I definitely want to hear what your thoughts and theories are down below. Make sure you guys give the video a thumbs up. It really helps out the channel. I really appreciate it. Stay tuned for my interviews that I have dropping as well. And as always, guys, please make sure to check back for more Pop Culture with Pat.